Hello and welcome to Progressive Education Society's Modern College of Pharmacy, Nigri, Pune. Myself, Dr. Bhushan Pimple. In this video, we will discuss about ASH values, their types, significance, and the methods to determine these ASH values. Before going into the details about the practical, first we will have a look at what are ASH values. Now, this is the percentage of ash that is obtained after complete burning of the crude drug. Complete burning in sense it should not have any charcoal in it. Burn to ash. The end product after incineration should be ash color or white color. Such a product is called as ash. So the percentage of ash obtained after incineration of the crude drug is called as ash value. There are basically three types, sometimes four types, like total ash value, which gives us the idea about total inorganic material present in a crude drug. Acid insoluble ash, it gives us the measure of certain inorganic substances like boron, silicate or sand, soil or glass. Then water soluble ash, it gives us the idea about the salts that are present in the plant like calcium salt, carbonates or phosphates or sulfates or sometimes calcium oxalate. These are the salts which are commonly found in a plant. And lastly, sulfated ash, this gives us the idea about the amount of inorganic material present in the plant that can be sulfated by addition of H2SO4. So these are basically four different types of ash values. Now, why, being a pharmacist, should we study this ash value is because these ash values gives us the idea about the inorganic material and the crude drug, whether it is pure, whether the crude drug is been adulterated by certain components like sand or soil or sometimes stone pieces in order to increase the weight. Or sometimes the crude drug is harvested, and during harvesting, collection or processing or storage, there are chances that sand, soil, mud may get adhered to it. So a good quality of crude drug should have the desired amount of ash value. It should not exceed beyond the limit. Like for example, the total ash value, as we have discussed, it gives the total amount of inorganic materials present in the crude drug. Now these total inorganic materials can be broadly classified into two categories. One is called as non-physiological ash. What do you mean by non-physiological ash? Is the plant is not producing and even it is not absorbing from the soil. These are the inorganic materials, those are adhered to the plant like soil or silica. Sometimes glass or borosilicates are found in certain unorganized crude drug which are intentionally added or sometimes unintentionally enter into the these glass or borosilicate pieces. These enter into the crude drug during processing or during grinding. These are not produced by the plant, and these all component inorganic elements are insoluble in dilute HCl. Another kind of ash value that the total ash has is water soluble ash. It is also referred to as physiological ash. Now physiological ash means the plant is secreting or either absorbing it through the soil. It is storing the components in the form of carbonates or calcium oxalate or phosphates. Now these water soluble ash are of very important, they play an important role in various biochemical reactions, or they also are the products of certain biochemical reactions, or they are very helpful for the routine or normal survival of the plant. Like, we'll take an example of calcium oxalate. It provides rigidity, strength to the plant tissue. So plants absorb calcium and they secrete oxalic acid. Now this oxalic acid is toxic to the plant. So the plants absorb calcium and bind it with oxalic acid to form calcium oxalate. Now such calcium oxalate crystals are not excreted by the plant. They cannot be excreted. So the plant transports these calcium oxalate crystals, or sometimes secretes the calcium oxalate crystals, only in the area wherein they want rigidity. Next, calcium carbonate. Sometimes some plants have been found to hold CO2 in the form of calcium carbonate. So whenever there is deficiency of CO2, these plants, they will break down calcium carbonate in order to obtain CO2 for the process of photosynthesis. So now calcium oxalate and calcium carbonate, both being inorganic material, are referred to as physiological ash. Now the process of total ash value determination. The process is extremely simple. Here you need to be accurate as far as weighings are concerned. Take an empty crucible, white empty crucible which can withstand these are silica crucible, or sometimes porcelain crucible can be used. Normally we use porcelain crucible in our labs, and this crucible should be washed, cleaned thoroughly and dried. Only after drying you should weigh it. Record the weight to the last decimal point. Then add 2 grams of crude drug, of which ash value is to be determined. The crude drug should generally be coarse powder or even fine powder. But the crude drug should not be added directly as pieces. It should be disintegrated into powdered form. Record the weight after addition of 2 gram of crude drug. Then incinerate this crucible along with the crude drug at around 400 to 600 degrees Celsius in an incinerator, also called as muffle furnace. See, here our normal hot air oven will not do the job because it cannot be elevated to this temperature usually. So we need an incinerator or muffle furnace, which is very commonly called as muffle furnace, so that we can attain this temperature and heat the crude drug until it turns white. Initially what happens is, while you are heating the crude drugs, they first turn black because the carbon is remaining and rest all water and other volatile matter goes away in the form of smoke. So first you get black colored smoke, but still heat it so that this black colored coal will now be converted into ash white or white colored ash. Until that you need to incinerate it. Then cool the ash or cool the crucible by taking it out of the furnace and immediately placing a lid over top of it, because there are chances that this ash contains certain may contain certain hygroscopic salts which can absorb the atmospheric moisture and increase in weight. So it should be cooled only by covering with lid. Then weigh the crucible by along with the ash, but make sure there is no lid on it. And lastly, calculate the ash value. We will have a look at the process by pictographic manner. See, initially this is the porcelain piece, porcelain crucible. This porcelain crucible is to be weighed. Now record the weight up to the last decimal point, that is 26.630 as is in this case. Okay. Then tear the weighing balance, put it to 0 and then add your crude drug. The crude drug should be added around 2 gram. But If you get 2 point any whatever the digits are, record all the digits up to the last decimal point, 2.030 in this case, because this will hamper the ash value during calculation. If you are not weighing up to the last decimal point, your calculations will go wrong. Now this is the muffle furnace, which has an ability to heat the contents up to 1000 degree or so. It is fitted with electronic thermometer or thermo gauge is present here. Then this is the inner side of the muffle furnace. You can see here the red hot coil. It is been surrounded around the chamber, very small chamber. You can place at the max 3 to 4 crucibles at a time. So always preheat the furnace and then place the crucible by holding it with pair of tongues. Make sure you are using gloves and pair of tongues to place the crucible, because the inner temperature is extremely hot. It can be around 600 degrees Celsius in our case. We require 600 degrees Celsius. So while placing the crucible as well as while taking the crucible out of the furnace, one has to be extremely cautious. Then once you take it out, see, this should be the color of the ash. The color should be either ash or whitish in color. It varies with the crude drug, but generally it remains ash white. And now you need to weigh the ash along with the crucible. Record the readings up to the last decimal point, as in this case is 26.970. Now we will be taking these values to determine the amount of ash value. Calculations for total ash value goes like, suppose weight of empty crucible in our case was 26.630 gram. Weight of crude drug taken was 2.03 gram. Weight of crucible along with the ash was 26.970. Therefore, the weight of ash will be calculated as weight of crucible with ash minus weight of empty crucible, that is 26.970 minus 26.630, which comes to around 0.340. Now this 0.340 is the weight of our ash. Now we will calculate it. Suppose in this case 2.030 gram of crude drug has given 0.340 gram of ash. Then what will be the amount of ash in 100 grams of crude drug? Why 100 is because we need to determine the percentage. So percentage of total ash is, if 2.030 gives 0.340 of ash, then 100 gram will give Z. Therefore, by cross multiplication, you can determine Z is equal to 100 is multiplied by 0.340 divided by 2030, which is the weight of the crude drug. Then you get 16.748% weight by weight. This is the total ash value. Remember, always the percent of total ash should be written as percent weight by weight. Why weight by weight is because the W in the numerator is the weight of ash which is obtained after completion of the experiment, whereas W in the denominator denotes the weight of the crude drug prior to the experiment, taken before the experiment. So whatever you are taking before the experiment, if it is weighed, you should write W, and after the experiment, if you are again weighing, as in this case is the ash, you have weighed the ash, so the W in the numerator denotes the weight that you have weighed after the experiment. So initial weight and later weight, both weights are taken to represent the total ash value. Similarly, there is the process for acid insoluble ash determination, but in this case, instead of taking the crude drug, we require total ash which was formed in the obtained in the previous experiment. Take the total ash and add it to beaker containing 100 ml of dilute HCl. Boil the contents of the beaker for at least 15 to 20 minutes. Now boiling for 15 to 20 minutes means once the solution in the or the contents in the beaker have started boiling, you should start the time counting. Because 100 ml of beaker, if you just heat for 15 minutes, sometimes it may start boiling after 15 minutes. So boiling should be, the time counting should be done only if, after the contents have started boiling. And then filter through an ashless filter paper. Now remember, this is very critical. Do not use your normal lab filter paper, handmade filter paper. Instead use ashless filter paper, because the ash value of this filter paper is negligible or zero. It does not produce any ash. Then weigh an empty crucible, like the previous experiment. To this empty crucible, you need to place the ashless filter paper along with the residue. Once you have filtered it, do not discard the residue. Take the residue and filter it, or take the residue and place it in the crucible, and now incinerate it at the same temperature and cool the ash by covering with lid and weigh the crucible with ash. This gives you the ash value of acid insoluble ash. Now the calculations for acid insoluble ash. See the weight of empty crucible, weight of crucible with acid insoluble ash, then weight of acid insoluble ash will be the 26.710 minus 26.630, that is the weight of empty crucible, which gives around 0.080 gram. So in this case, remember, acid insoluble ash, again you need to correlate it with the crude drug that you have taken in the first experiment. In the first experiment, remember, we have taken 2.030 gram of the crude drug. So here we have got 0.080 gram of acid insoluble ash with reference to the air dried crude drug material that we have taken initially for total ash. The crude drug grams should be for total ash, but as we are determining acid insoluble ash by taking total ash, so do not take into consideration the weight of total ash anywhere here. Always you need to take into consideration the weight of crude drug initially taken and the weight obtained after incineration. For acid insoluble ash, take the weight of acid insoluble ash. Now here the percentage of acid insoluble ash goes like 2.030 gram of crude drug gives 0.080 gram of acid insoluble ash. Therefore 100 grams will give Z by cross multiplication, that is 100 into 0.080 gives 2.030. Therefore our acid insoluble ash, percent acid insoluble ash is 3.94% weight by weight. Remember, always the acid insoluble ash is lower than total ash, because total ash is the cumulative mixture of um, physiological as well as non-physiological ash. So in this case, 3.94% is the weight of boron or silica or soil or mud or borosilicates which are adhered to the plant material. So generally in case of roots, you will find this acid insoluble ash value to be increased because roots are generally contaminated with soil. Similarly, the process for water soluble ash goes. Now here the process for water soluble ash is, we will be following the process for water insoluble ash, and only in the calculation we will be converting the insoluble ash by subtracting it from 100 to get water soluble ash. That is the only difference. We are not calculating water soluble, we are not determining practically water soluble ash, we are determining water insoluble ash, and in the calculation, by calculation we will arrive at water soluble ash. Okay, we will see how that is the process. The total ash, again here we require total ash, so take the total ash and put it in a beaker containing 100 ml of distilled water. Remember here, water you are taking should be distilled, should not be contaminated with any salts, or else they will add up to the acid water soluble ash value. Boil it for 15 to 20 minutes like we have done with acid insoluble ash, and filter through ashless filter paper. Now next is weigh an empty crucible and place the ashless filter paper along with its residue in the crucible. Now next, incinerate it at 400 to 600 degrees Celsius until you get white colored ash, and then cool the ash by covering with lid over top of it. Then weigh the crucible with ash and calculate the ash value. Calculate the water insoluble ash first. Now the calculations are similar to acid insoluble ash but with a slight twist. Here we are taking weight of crucible plus total ash, weight of crucible with water insoluble ash, and here we require the weight of water insoluble ash. That means we are calculating the weight of water insoluble ash, which is subtracting the weight, that is this weight, from this 26.630, we get 0.250. Now what is 0.250? Is water insoluble ash. But look at the heading, what are we supposed to calculate is water soluble ash. Remember, in the process we have taken residue and the filter paper. When you are taking residue along with the filter paper, it is insoluble ash or insoluble matter. Residue is not soluble, it is insoluble, so it retains on the filter paper. Now here is the twist, this particular line, that is therefore weight of water soluble ash. What is the amount of ash that has been solubilized in water? We have not determined it. Now how you can do is this, is take the weight of total ash you have taken, okay, and subtract it from water, water insoluble ash from it, that is 0.0340 is the total weight of total ash, and subtract 0.250, that is water insoluble ash, you get around 0.09 gram. Now this is our water soluble ash. Remember, we have arrived to this number by subtracting the weight of water insoluble ash from weight of total ash. This is the additional line in calculations of total water soluble ash. Rest all is same. If 2.030 gram of crude drug is giving 0.09 gram of water soluble ash, then 100 will give that. So by cross multiplication you arrive at this figure, that is 4.433% in this example is the percent water soluble ash. Now this is the ash that is containing calcium oxalates, calcium phosphates, or sometimes calcium carbonates, or any other inorganic material that is secreted or absorbed by the plant from the soil. Next, the weight, you are clear with this W. This is the this denotes the weight of the crude drug we have initially taken and weight of the ash obtained after completion of the experiment. So just have a look at water soluble ash calculations properly, and this will complete the total ash value.